Today, we're installing a Mustang Cobra independent rear suspension in our Ranger-based pickup, Project Rolling Thunder. Then, we're picking pads and rotors for the street and for the track. It's all today here on Trucks.
And more aggressive Yellowstuff pads.
Hey guys, welcome to Trucks. Today, we're back on Project Rolling Thunder, which is our attempt to turn an 01 Mazda B2500 four-cylinder plain Jane pickup truck into a powerful forced induction V8 manual 6-speed transmission street and track machine. Now, we're obviously getting away from the budget a little bit because that was stage one of this project, and we're going to spend a little bit more coin this time around. We're going to try to do it wisely.
Now, part of that sinister plan is to take tried and proven high-performance racing parts and fundamental techniques and apply them to this chassis, such as the independent rear suspension that we borrowed from the 04 Cobra. Now, another place that we drew some inspiration is from another track-prepped V8 Ford Ranger that was featured on Power Block not too long ago. This 95 Ranger belongs to Matt Beauchard of Beauchard Racing and Fabrication, and it's a little bit of inspiration for us in our project. The functional splitter and full-on roll cage make this a 100% race truck, powered by a 302 carbureted V8. Custom front and rear suspension of Matt's own design make this truck handle like crazy.
Now, just like you guys, we don't have a frame jig or a frame table to work off of, so we're going to use a flat and level section of our concrete shop floor to get the job done. Now, the last time we had our truck in the shop, we took the body, set it down on the bare frame, and selected our ride height. And we just welded on these stands, which is nothing more than a piece of tubing, a nut and a washer welded to it, and then a bolt on the bottom so it's threaded and height adjustable. That way we can level out the frame and make sure everything's right. Now, the first step in installing our IRS subframe is going to be to remove all the shock mounts, leaf spring hangers, and brackets that are going to be in the way. That way we've got some clean and flat real estate to work off of. Now, our favorite way of removing the stubborn factory frame rivets is to cut an X in the head and use a sharp chisel on our air hammer. Makes quick work of it. All right, we've got the rear spring hangers and shock mounts knocked loose from the frame. But before we remove this front spring hanger, we want to make sure this is tack welded together and nice and solid. If you take a closer look, you can see this front frame half and rear frame half overlap and are attached at this point by this cross member and about 6 or 7 rivets. 4 of them holding this hanger in place. So just to be extra cautious and make sure nothing moves around, we're going to weld this up and make it solid.
And we wanted to compare the weight of our Cobra IRS suspension system with the stick axle and springs that we took out of the Ranger, just to show you the difference. Now, our Cobra system, minus brakes, weighs in right at 309 pounds. In order to get an accurate representation of what this thing weighed, with brakes, springs, all that kind of stuff, well, we're just going to actually stick it on the scale. We've got a spring, another spring, caliper, rotors, and don't forget the pads. That brings us to, wow, 367 pounds total weight.
Now, the stock Ford 7.5-inch rear axle with brakes, leaf springs, and shackles weighed in at about 260 pounds, meaning we picked up a solid 100 pounds. And why are we excited about that when we all know adding weight to a high-performance vehicle is kind of counterintuitive? Well, that's because we're adding it in the right spot. If you guys remember, the stock version of our truck, as well as stage 1, had a 62 to 38 front-to-rear weight bias. Not good for putting power through the rear wheels. So by adding 100 pounds to the back, we're going to help with that weight bias. We're going to lower our overall center of gravity.
Now, with the entire independent rear suspension completely disassembled, Ryan's going to grab the subframe and get started on the installation. Now, the biggest mechanical advantage to an independent rear suspension is that when one wheel moves, it doesn't affect the other wheel. Unlike with a stick axle, when one wheel travels up, the other one has no choice but to react and to move kind of along with that. So an IRS has a handling advantage right off the bat, but it gets better because it's tunable. And just like a front suspension, there's an upper and lower control arm, with the upper having an adjustable eccentric, which allows you to change the camber setting or the tilt in of the wheel and tire at the top. Now, another tuning point on this system is the adjustable tie rod, which gives you a toe-in adjustment and helps you really control the way a vehicle tracks with this system on it. Now, the Cobra systems like this have a slightly larger sway bar than the GT, along with the beefier 31 spline CV half shafts and, of course, the giant lower control arm that's cast aluminum. Now, as good as this system is, the aftermarket allows us to make it even better. I've left this side completely assembled to show you where we can improve it. Now, the spindle, or upright, has a spherical style upper and lower ball joint, and they're not worn out and fairly precise, so they're going to stay. But the upper and lower control arm bushings, well, they're made out of rubber, and although they offer a nice, smooth, and vibration-free ride, they're mushy, and they contribute to wheel hop, so they're going away. Now, this guy, as well as being a giant weight, is a vibration dampener that was put there by the Ford NVH engineers to help control noise, vibration, and harshness. Well, quite frankly, we're just not as concerned about that as we are about controlling the wheel hop issue and improving the handling. So this guy goes away, as well as these rubber isolators that connect this dampener to the third member and lock it into the chassis. Well, they're going away too. So when we come back, we're going to show you exactly how we're going to improve on a system that was already really good from the start.
Welcome back to Trucks, where today we're installing an 03 Mustang Cobra independent rear suspension system underneath the back of our 01 Mazda B2500 Ranger-based truck, all in an attempt to make this pickup handle more like a car. Now, once we get the subframe located and positioned where it needs to be, we can weld on some brackets to attach the subframe. But like Kevin told you earlier, we've got to address the factory compromises and shortcomings of this setup, and with the help of the aftermarket, we can make this system even better.
Now, if you remember, we used a Maximum Motorsports oil filter relocation kit in our Marauder engine in Stage 1, but their strength really lies in Mustang Performance Suspension System upgrades. So, since this is a Cobra IRS, well, we had them send us a kit to help beef it up. This is their Grip Pack IRS upgrade and replaces the factory rubber bushings sleeved in steel with these Delrin bushings, very hard compound with a hard anodized aluminum center pin for strength and lightweight. They also send enough shims to get a very precise realignment when you install the new system. Lubricating grease, a scuffing pad to clean out any debris or corrosion from the control arms without distortion, even a pair of gloves to keep this nasty stuff off your hands. But the best thing about the kit is that they send an installation and removal tool with the kit. It makes it pretty easy. Now, the control arm bushings are different sizes, so match up your removal tool to the bushing with a test fit, and follow that by the spacer, washer, and nut, and snug it up by hand. Then, using hand tools, slowly tighten the nut and the assembly. It's important not to use pneumatic tools so you don't force any distortion into the aluminum control arm. Now, it may take a while, but you're going to know when the bushing comes out. Now, aluminum control arms are lightweight, but aluminum is soft. That's why they provide a scuffing pad, so you get rid of the schmutz and the corrosion, and you don't distort the aluminum. It's very important that you have a nice, flush fit with the new Delrin bushings. Now, don't confuse Delrin with urethane. It's a much higher durometer and does not compress. Delrin was actually invented in the 50s by DuPont and is used as a bearing in Hot Wheels. Pretty cool. Now, this is going to work great for us for a test fit. And by the way, don't forget some anti-seize on the bolt threads and in between the washers to make sure everything doesn't bind. Now, the shims and the lube, that happens on final assembly. The shims really are only there to take up any slack that may have been created by eliminating the rubber bushing. So for now, this is going to serve us very well, and I've got a few more of these things to do.
All right, with the subframe blown apart and the frame ground down to bare metal in a couple of spots, well, we can finally get to the installation of this thing. Now, we knew where to locate it and how to position it based off of measurements that we took and from information we gathered from the helpful and knowledgeable tech guys at Maximum. Now, before we disassembled the stock truck, we measured where the rear axle center line was of the leaf-sprung solid axle pickup, and that's right here. Then we also determined the axle center line of the independent rear suspension system and matched things up. Now, the first thing we're going to do is install and weld in some temporary bracing to lock the subframe in place. Then we can get to work making up and fabricating some mounts to permanently mount the subframe. But it's still going to be bolt-in and it's still going to be removable. Now, after measuring and measuring again and triple checking and measuring again, we determined we had the subframe sitting at the exact ride height and location that we needed. So we just locked it in place using some 1-inch angle iron. And these will serve as temporary braces until we can design and cut out some permanent brackets using our Torchmate. Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. While Kevin was working on the control arm bushings, I had a chance to make up a cross member and some brackets so we could locate our subframe. Now, like we told you earlier, this thing's gotta be removable, so it took a little extra time to make brackets that would bolt into the frame. But it's gonna be time well spent if we've ever gotta work on any of these suspension parts that require a little extra clearance. So let me show you what I've done. Now, the first thing I did was plasma cut a couple of holes in the backside of the tubular subframe, and that will allow us to install this plate with 2 1/2-inch grade 8 captured nuts welded to the backside of it. Once that's welded solid, we can install our cross member, which is a piece of 1 3/4 DOM tubing that we bent up on our hydraulic tubing bender, along with some 3/16 plate we cut out using our Torchmate. And once everything's welded solid, we can install the cross member on the inside of the frame rails and weld it up for good. Now, if you notice the location of the cross member mounting points, well, they're right here above the lower control arm pickup points. And that's because that's where a lot of the suspension energy and load is going to be transferred. So doing it right here will eliminate any subframe deflection, often found in the factory IRS setup. Front half we did a little bit differently. This is a piece of 1.5 DOM welded directly to the subframe and then again to the bottom side of this bracket. And that'll handle any vertical loads. Any side-to-side movement will be handled by this piece of 1-inch 3/16 Walt DOM, again welded to the same bracket. We've got a couple of captured nuts welded to the inside of the frame rail, a gusset for strength, and this thing is removable and still plenty strong. But we're not done yet. Now, just to make sure this subframe is installed as rigidly as possible, I went ahead and added another piece of plate in between the upper control arm mounting points. This top piece will become the bracket that's welded to the frame rail. But before we do that, we've got to notch the frame for upper control arm clearance. Once we do that, we'll box in the remaining section of the frame rail and add the necessary gussets. Now, the benefits of having these brackets at the frame or even inboard of the frame is that it allows us to remove the goofy, flex-prone factory subframe end. Now, this thing was designed to fit an existing Mustang platform, and now that we don't need it, we get to cut them off. Now, the things that limit running really wide tires and wheels on the back of a Mustang are both the shock and the forward subframe mounting point. So by eliminating these, we give ourselves more options for fat rubber.
Now, I wanted to show you what the rest of the components in the Maximum Motorsports grip pack look like, as well as what a little bit of elbow grease and paint can do for the appearance of this stuff. Now, these stock sway bar end links are going away to be replaced by the Maximum links, which are billet aluminum and hind jointed for adjustability of sway bar preload. The stock CV half shafts, well, there's nothing wrong with them, but we media blasted them and threw a coat of paint on. They're good to go. The upper control arms have the Delrin bushings set into place. We also media blasted and threw a coat of paint on them. They look pretty good. Now, the lowers, we blasted them as well, but we didn't paint them. Instead of painting, we put a barrier coat called shark hide that's supposed to keep it from oxidizing and keep the appearance of aluminum pieces and other raw metals looking good. We're going to test it out and see how it works. Now, the 8.8 pumpkin just got cleaned up, but the rear isolator, which is rubber, gets replaced by a solid billet aluminum piece, just as the front left and right isolators are replaced by, again, solid but adjustable billet pieces. Now, the last pieces of this puzzle are the stock tie rod ends, which get replaced by these lightweight, hard anodized billet aluminum rods, again, with Heim joint ends that are bump steer adjustable. Now, all of these pieces will virtually eliminate any wheel hop issues that we may have had with the stock system, and look pretty snazzy doing it.
You're watching Trucks. For a DVD copy of this episode, just go to PowerBlockTV.com and order your copy for just $5.95 plus shipping and handling. Start your own Trucks collection, delivered right to your door from the Power Block.
There you go. Hey guys, welcome back to Trucks, where our independent rear suspension install is just about complete, short of a couple of gussets for the upper mounts. Now everything's assembled and loosely bolted together, and everything fits just like it's supposed to. And it looks pretty good too. But let's take a closer look at what we did for upper A-arm clearance and what we did to finish off the upper subframe mounts. Now once we were happy with the amount of frame we trimmed for A-arm clearance, we went ahead and plated the bottom of the rail and boxed in the remainder. Then we just added these vertical gussets for our upper subframe mounts. Then, to finish things off, we added this top plate for strength and to help out in the looks department. And we'll obviously box in the frame rails from this point forward. Now, if you're doing a project, anything similar to this at home, and you're worried about compromising on strength, well, there's no need to. Think about this. The factory IRS subframe assembly was held in place with just 4 bolts. Here, we've got 12 of them. So those 12 bolts, along with the cross members, brackets, and bracing that we've added, I'm sure we've significantly increased the stiffness of the subframe itself and this entire frame section, which is a good thing, because this truck is going to get hammered on.
Now, it doesn't make any sense to do all these chassis upgrades along with a supercharged high horsepower engine and not pay attention to the brakes, because trust me, we want this thing to stop. So out back, we're using EBC's dimpled and vented Cobra rotors. Now, we're using a bit of strategy here because we've picked up an extra set of rotors, and they're Redstuff and more aggressive Yellowstuff pads. So once we bed in the pads to a specific rotor, well, they become a match set, so we can easily switch depending on where we're driving from a street to a track setup. If you're looking at options on upgrading your exhaust system in your truck or car, well, you might want to consider what Cherry Bomb's got to offer. The Cherry Bomb Turbo has an aluminized steel jacket for a long life, and it improves flow over stock at the same time as reducing sound levels. It's got different options to fit almost every vehicle, and it's reversible in case you got a tight fit and you need to change the offset of the inlet or outlet. Now, if you got a little more scratch and you want to upgrade to a fully welded muffler, check out the Cherry Bomb Pro. It's a directional muffler and features a unique wing plate design to really step up performance with a killer sound. It's constructed of aluminized steel and painted with a high-temp gray coating for good looks, and it will give you a long life. So, if you're looking for a way to disturb the peace and get a lot of bang for your buck, Cherry Bomb mufflers are sold wherever quality performance parts are sold. Thanks for watching Trucks. See you guys next week.